The human colony on the edge of the Zentari starfield had always been a quiet place. It was a small outpost, mostly made for science and trade, with a few defense ships guarding it. Nothing exciting happened there until the day an alien royal ship entered orbit. The Xyrelians were a proud and ancient species. Tall, silver-skinned, with glowing blue eyes and long tails that curled behind them when they walked, they looked both graceful and powerful. They came from a world with strict customs, especially around their most private and sacred rituals. The leader of the visiting group was Princess Gira, daughter of the Xyreli Emperor. She had come for diplomacy, or at least that's what her message said. But the truth was, she was curious. Humans had grown fast in the galaxy, becoming known, not only for their strength but also their strange emotional power. Rumors had spread across star systems. Humans formed deep bonds without the help of chemicals, without rituals, and without mating seasons. Sao found that hard to believe. Her own people had strong instincts that triggered once a year. Everything mating, bonding, loyalty was tied to that cycle. To live without it sounded impossible. And so, while the other royals focused on trade talks and defense agreements, Gira asked to join a welcome dinner with the human base officers. The dinner was casual by human standards. Lights were soft, people laughed, and the air smelled of roasted vegetables and warm bread. Gira sat beside Lieutenant Ryan, the colony's language specialist. He had short brown hair, calm eyes, and a quiet nature that made others feel at ease. He didn't speak much, but he watched everything. As the evening went on, Gira tasted human food, asked questions about Earth, and tried to understand human customs. Then, as the table quieted down for dessert, she asked something that made the entire room freeze. "When is your mating season?" The fork in Ryan's hand stopped halfway to his mouth. The base commander nearly choked on her drink. One officer laughed nervously. Gira looked around, confused by their reactions, repeated her question more slowly, thinking she had spoken unclear. Why did Ryan cleared his throat and set his fork down? "We don't have one," he said. Shay frowned. "What do you mean?"
All species have a season for bonding, for joining, for choosing a life partner. Not humans, Ryan said. We form relationships based on time, trust, and
feelings. It can happen any time, or not at all. Now she looked truly puzzled. But without a chemical trigger, how do you know who to choose? How do you build loyalty? Isn't it chaotic? Ryan gave a small smile. Maybe it is, but it works for us. Zira stared at him like he had just said he could fly. Her guards whispered behind her. Clearly, the idea shocked them too. She leaned back in her chair and looked thoughtful, even suspicious. "This sounds like a myth," she said. "I would like to observe it for myself." The commander tried to steer the conversation away, but Jira's voice had weight. She was royalty, and once she asked something, it was hard to deny. By the end of the evening, she had made her choice. She would remain on the colony for 7 days. Her reason was simple: to see human bonding in action. Ryan was assigned as her official guide, mostly because he understood her language best. The next morning, their tour began. Zed walked through the colony with her usual calm, wearing her long silver robes and a small datapad in hand. She asked endless questions. Why do those two walk so close? Why is that human smiling at the other? Is hugging a signal of choice or just comfort? Why is that one wearing a ring? Ryan answered as best as he could. He explained, friendship, dating, marriage, family. But every explanation just led to more questions. Why I could not believe there was no trigger. No biological season to force humans to connect. In her culture, people felt nothing for most of the year, until the mating time came. Then, for days, emotions bloomed, choices were made, and bonds formed. But humans, they seemed to just choose each other. By day 3, Gira had seen enough. To be frustrated, she sat on a bench near the base's garden, looking tired. Ryan sat beside her, offering a bottle of water. She took it, staring at the passing people. "Your species is chaotic," she said. "And yet, you build families, raise young, fight wars together, all without cycles, without signals. I do not understand. Maybe it's not meant to be understood, Ryan said gently. It's more about feeling than logic. Zira glanced at him. You're very calm for someone being studied. He laughed softly. You're not the first alien to be confused by us. She turned away, but her eyes stayed on him longer than... Before that night, she met with her guards. They reported back to her father's court. But Jira gave an order. Do not send a ship yet. 8. She needed more time. What she felt around Ryan wasn't anything like her people's rituals, but it stirred something. A question, a pull. The next morning, she asked something bold. I want a demonstration, she said to Ryan. Show me how a human chooses. Ryan blinked. I don't think there's a step-by-step guide. Then make one, she said firmly. I will know the truth by watching. He had no idea what to do. But somehow, he agreed, and as he walked beside her, unsure what to show. First, Gira found herself watching him not just for answers, but for something she didn't yet understand. The next day started with clouds over the colony, a soft gray sky hanging above as the wind carried the smell of rain. Gira stood near the edge of the garden, her long silver robe gently swaying in the breeze. She looked calm on the outside, but inside she felt restless. Ryan arrived on time, as always, holding 2 mugs. Tea, he said. Figured you'd want something warm. You guessed correctly, she replied, taking it with a nod. They walked in silence for a moment, moving past rows of growing vegetables and small fruit trees. Nearby, 2 human workers laughed while planting. Gira narrowed her eyes. They are not bonded, she said. Yet they show closeness. Ryan nodded. They're friends. Humans care for each other, even outside of romantic bonds. Species is strange, she said again, sipping the tea. You keep saying that, Ryan smiled, because it remains true. As the morning went on, Ryan took her through different parts of the base. The training yard came first. Soldiers were running drills, lifting weights, sparring, shouting instructions. One woman fell during a sprint and scraped her arm. Immediately 2 others ran to help her up, checking her wound and calling for a medic. ZYHRA watched closely. That looks like loyalty, she said. It is, Ryan replied. They've trained together for months. They trust each other. But they're not family, and not bonded in your romantic way. No. But humans form many kinds of bonds. Not everything is mating or love. Sometimes it's friendship, sometimes duty. Zira tilted her head. So many layers, and no season to guide them.
Next.
Ryan took her to the school area. A few dozen children were drawing on tablets while a teacher walked around. Some kids ran up to Ryan, giggling and waving. Lieutenant Ryan. Did you bring the alien lady again? He laughed. Yes, kids. This is Princess Gira. Zira knelt slightly to meet their eyes. Greetings, small ones. One of the children, a little girl with bright hair, held out a picture. This is you and him. The picture showed Ryan and Gira standing together, smiling. Zhao blinked. Why? Why did you draw this? Because you 2 look happy. The girl said simply. Zer didn't reply. She kept the picture. After the school visit, they stopped by the small cafe at the heart of the colony. Couples and friends sat under umbrellas, drinking and talking. Some held hands. Others leaned into each other, whispering softly. Sarai sat at a table and watched everything. Her eyes scanned every movement, every smile, every glance. Ryan sat across from her, sipping his drink. I've seen many touches today, she said. Gestures. But how do you know when it's love? You feel it, Ryan said. It grows. It's not something we always see clearly at first. It takes time. That sounds unreliable. Maybe, Ryan said. But it also makes it special. Because when someone chooses you, it means they truly want to. Not because of instinct. Not because they're forced. But because they feel it, and they mean it. Zira stared at him. And you? Have you ever felt it? Ryan paused. He looked down at his drink. Once, a long time ago. But she chose someone else. Did it hurt? Yes, but I respected her choice. Zira looked away. Her own people didn't have such stories. When the season came, choices were made. Fast, few questioned them. Everything was chemical, simple, automatic. But this human way, this slow, uncertain, emotional path, it felt dangerous. Yet her heart beat faster every time Ryan smiled at her. "We need to keep observing," she said, standing up suddenly. "Take me to someone who is bonded long-term. I want to see the results." Ryan led her to an elderly couple who ran the colony's greenhouse. Paul and Clara had been married for 40 years. Their hands were wrinkled, but they still worked side by side every day. They greeted Ryan warmly and welcomed Gira inside. While they walked between rows of flowering plants, Gira asked questions. "When did you bond?" "What?" "We met when we were 20, Clara said. "He brought me tea on a rainy day, just like your friend here." "And how did you know it was love?" Paul smiled. "I did not right away, but I knew she made me feel safe, made the world brighter." "And now?" Gira asked. "Now," Clara said, resting her head lightly on Paul's shoulder. "He's still the one I want to wake up next to." Zira felt her chest tighten. It was not mating season, and yet their bond was stronger than any ritual. As they left the greenhouse, Gira held the drawing the child gave her. She didn't speak for a long time. Later that evening, Ryan and Gira stood at the edge of the colony, watching the stars rise. The night was quiet, the wind cool. Ryan looked over at her. "So," he said, "did the demonstration help?" Zira didn't answer right away. "I thought I understood bonding. My people believe we have mastered it, but now I'm not sure." "You're learning. That's what matters." She turned to him. "Do you think a Zyrelli could feel what a human feels?" "Maybe," he said gently. "Feelings don't follow rules." "Maybe you're already feeling it." She stepped back. "I should return to my quarters, of course." But before leaving, she looked at him one more time. Her tail flicked softly. Behind her, a small sign of unease. And for the first time in her life, Princess Gira felt something she couldn't name, something without a season, without logic, something very human. Princess Gira sat alone in her guest quarters, staring at the small drawing the human child had given her. It showed her and Ryan standing together, smiling under the stars. Such a simple thing, yet it stayed in her hand for hours. She had read books about humans before this visit. The Zyrelli archives called them emotional, unpredictable, and stubborn. Their lack of natural bonding cycles was seen as a flaw, even a weakness. But nothing in those records had prepared her for the warmth she saw between them. The bonds that weren't forced, the loyalty that wasn't triggered, and worst of all, the strange fluttering she now felt in her chest. Her guards knocked at the door. One of them, Commander Vec, stepped inside. "Your Highness, we've received a message. The Emperor wants an update." Zira stood and adjusted her silver robe. "Tell him I'm still observing." "You're starting to worry," Vec said softly. "You've been on this world for longer than expected. I need more time." Vec looked at the picture in her hand but said nothing. He gave a respectful nod and left. The next morning, Ryan met her near the shuttle bay. He looked a little tired, with dark circles under his eyes, but still greeted her with his usual calm smile. "You okay?" he asked. "I did not sleep well," she said honestly. "Same here." They didn't say much after that. They walked quietly through the base. But something was different today. It was as if there was a question hanging between them unspoken. But felt, as they passed through the engineering room, one of the power conduits suddenly sparked. A loud bang echoed through the space. One worker shouted for help. A second later, flames shot up from a control panel. Without thinking, Ryan rushed forward. He grabbed a nearby extinguisher and jumped into the smoke. People shouted, trying to stop him, but he moved fast, sprayed the fire, covered his mouth with his sleeve, and pulled out the injured technician. ZYHRA stood frozen at first. People were trained never to act without calculation. But Ryan, he just acted. The flames were put out quickly. The injured worker was taken to the med bay. When Ryan returned, coughing and covered in dust, Gira rushed to him. You're injured, she said, grabbing his arm. Just smoke, he said, brushing it off. I'm fine. Why would you do that? He looked at her, because he needed help. And there wasn't time to think. Zyra stared at him in silence. Her fingers were still holding his sleeve. That night, she sat near the garden alone. The wind moved through the leaves gently. Stars above twinkled like silver dust. Ryan came to find her again, sat beside her, letting the silence speak. For a while, you didn't ask a single question all day, he said at last. I had nothing to ask, she whispered. I had something to feel. He looked at her, surprised. Did you? She nodded slowly. On my world, we feel nothing until the season comes. Then everything happens at once. Passion, loyalty, love. But today, when you ran into the fire, I felt fear. Not for the flames, for you. He didn't speak, and when you came back, I felt something I do not understand. Relief, and something more. Ryan didn't laugh or tease. He looked serious. Maybe it's what you've been looking for. Maybe you've started feeling what humans feel. But it's not our season, she said, shaking her head. This should not be possible. Feelings don't follow rules, Ryan said softly. Shira looked at him with her bright blue eyes. Then how do you control them? We don't, he replied. We live with them. We carry them. And sometimes we follow them. A quiet moment passed. Then she stood. I must speak to my people, she said. They need to know this. What will you say? I don't know yet. But something important is happening. And if we ignore it, we'll stay blind forever. Ryan nodded.
Ow.
Whatever you decide, I'll support you. Zero gave him a small smile, the first true one she had shown. Not a polite smile, not a royal mask, a real one, soft and unsure. The next day, she entered the colony's communication center and sent a private message to the Zyrelli Council. She didn't speak of danger or alliances. She spoke of the bond she had seen, the one that humans built, not with seasons, but with choice. She described their kindness, their bravery, how their emotions were not wild but strong. Most of all, she said, I think I have begun to feel it myself, and it frightens me. She didn't know how her father would respond. She didn't know if her council would laugh or panic. But for the first time in her life, she didn't care. Later, she found Ryan near the repair docks. He was helping replace the damaged power panel. She stood beside him. I'm staying longer. He raised an eyebrow. Still doing research?
Else.
But now, it's personal. Ryan chuckled. Glad to hear it. And as they stood side by side, watching the stars rise again, space between them felt smaller, warmer, different. Didn't understand it completely. But for the first time, she didn't need to. The message reached the Zyrelli royal court faster than expected. Princess Gira's words, filled with emotion and uncertainty, shocked the High Council. They read her description of human bonds of love without timing, of loyalty without ritual land. Many of them didn't believe it. Others feared it. The Zyrelli were proud of their traditions. They saw their controlled cycles as a sign of strength. The idea that a royal daughter might be influenced by an unbonded human troubled them deeply. The emperor's reply came the next day. You will return home immediately, he ordered. Your mission is complete. Your presence among them has changed you. Zira stood quietly after reading the message. The wind outside the base was cold, but her mind felt colder. They want to pull me away, she said to Ryan. He frowned. You expected that? Yes, but I hoped they would understand. What will you do? Zira walked to the edge of the observation deck and stared at the stars. I'll do what they asked. I will give them a demonstration, not just words. Something they cannot ignore. Ryan tilted his head. A demonstration. Yes. She turned toward him, her eyes steady. Me. Show me what it really means when a human chooses someone. Ryan hesitated. Zira. This isn't a game. Showing something like that means something real. It's not for proof. It's for truth. She nodded. I want truth. Later that night, the two walked through the colony together. Ryan had no plan, no script. How could he show love when love was not something you could hold in your hand? But he knew one thing: feelings were shown through actions. So he simply invited her into his world. They visited a music room where a small human band played soft songs. Gira sat close to the speakers, her fingers tapping with curiosity as the melody wrapped around her. "It feels like emotions are inside the sound," she whispered. "They are," Ryan said. "Songs tell the things we can't say." And they walked through the family quarters. Children played with their parents, laughter filled the air, and warm lights glowed from inside the windows. Gira saw hugs without reason, kisses without signals, and smiles that had no timing at all. All of this, she said, with no season pushing them. "It's not instinct," Ryan replied. "It's choice." They stopped by the lake, just beyond the colony fence. The water reflected the night sky. Gira bent down and touched the surface. "We build temples for bonding back home," she said. "Ceremonies filled with light and rules, but here, this place feels more honest." Ryan looked at her for a long moment. "I think the most beautiful bonds come when they aren't forced." She stood and faced him. "Then show me. Not a ceremony, not a ritual. It's just you." He looked nervous, then nodded slowly. He reached for her hand. Her eyes widened in her culture. Hand contact during the non-season was rare, almost forbidden. It meant openness, vulnerability. He waited silent. Finally, she placed her hand in. His fingers were warm. His grip was gentle. Neither of them spoke, but both of them knew something had changed. The next day, Gira requested a public broadcast, dissect for a single message to be sent across Zyreli Space One, that even her father would see. The humans were surprised, but agreed. Inside the recording room, Gira stood straight, wearing no crown or royal robe, just a plain silver dress. Beside her, Ryan stood silently as she spoke. "To my people," she began, "I know my words have caused confusion, fear, doubt. I understand. But today I want to show you something, not in words, but in truth." She turned to Ryan. "This is Lieutenant Ryan. He has no bond cycle, no instincts that demand connection. Yet in him, I found courage, peace, and something else, something without a name in our language." She paused, then looked into the camera again. "He has not been chosen by chemistry or ritual. I choose him freely, without force, without a season. I choose him because I want to." Then she reached out and took Ryan's hand again, this time with no hesitation. "This is what I've learned. Love without control is not chaos. It is strength." The broadcast ended. For a long time, no reply came. But 2 days later, a Zyreli ship appeared in orbit. Not a warship, an observation vessel. It sent no threats. Only a message. "We are listening." Zira breathed out with relief. That evening, as she stood beside Ryan near the garden once more, she whispered, "I think they're beginning to understand in you?" he asked. She smiled, soft and real. "I think I'm beginning to feel." The stars above didn't change. The world didn't suddenly shift. But inside two hearts, one human, one alien, something new was born. Not from instinct, not from timing, but from choice. Inside the grand hall of the Zyreli Imperial Court, silence ruled. Holograms glowed across the room, replaying the message from Princess Gira. Her voice echoed off crystal walls. Her words, "I choose him because I want to," struck deeper than any weapon. In a society built on cycles and timing, those words carried weight that shook the very roots of their traditions. The emperor sat on his throne, his long robe flowing down like water. His eyes stayed fixed on the frozen image of his daughter holding a human's hand. Around him, high council members whispered in panic, "She has broken royal code. There was no bonding season. This cannot be real. She must return." Before others follow her path, a voice spoke louder than the rest. Elder Myrel, one of the oldest and most respected counselors, raised a hand and the room quieted. "What she did was not illegal," he said calmly, "but it was unheard of. We must decide, do we punish what we do not understand, or do we learn from it?" The emperor looked away from the hologram at last. I raised her to be strong, not reckless. And yet, Myril replied, she showed the strength to choose without instinct. Is that not power too? There was no easy answer. Outside the court, news spread across Zyreli space. Some called Jira a traitor to tradition. Others began to question their own way of living. Small groups started forming, young Zyreli citizens speaking openly about emotions they had never shared before. They wondered if maybe feelings didn't need to wait for a season. The Emperor felt the pressure building, but he was not ready to admit change. He sent a second message to Jira. You will return at once. The royal fleet will arrive in 5 days. The message was short and final. When Gira read it, she stood quietly for a long time. Her fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from something deeper. Ryan came into the room and noticed her expression. What is it? He asked. My father is sending a ship. They want me back. Do you want to go? He asked softly. She shook her head. I want to stay, but duty binds me. Maybe, Ryan said, but so does truth. Zero looked into his eyes. I won't let them erase what I've learned. That night, she sent a new message not to her father, but to the Zyreli people. She stood again in front of the recording device. Her voice was calm, but her eyes burned with purpose. My people, she said, a royal ship is coming to take me. They believe feelings are dangerous outside our cycle. They believe I've been changed by humans. They are right. I've changed. But not because I was forced, because I saw something real. This change isn't weakness, it's growth. For too long, we've waited for permission to feel. What if we don't have to wait? Then she paused, breathing deeply. If they take me, they may silence my voice. But they cannot silence what you've already heard. The message spread faster than before. On Zyreli space stations and learning halls, young minds listened and nodded. On far colonies, some began to write their own thoughts for the first time, not because of the season, but because they finally felt free to speak. Even in the Emperor's palace, servants and guards whispered behind closed doors. Something had begun, and it could not be stopped. 5 days later, the royal ship entered human space. It was massive, shaped like a silver spear with glowing energy fields. Its presence darkened the stars. The human colony sent a peaceful signal. This is neutral. Ground. No aggression will be allowed. The Zyreli ship replied coldly. We come for our princess. Inside the colony, tension filled every corner. ZYHRA stood near the landing pad, her silver robe replaced by a plain human jacket. Beside her stood Ryan, quiet but firm. A shuttle from the royal ship landed. 3 guards stepped out, followed by Commander VKH. He walked up to Zira and bowed. Your Highness, the Emperor demands your return, and if I refuse? Hesitated. We will carry out our orders. You may tell him, she said, that I do not obey cycles anymore. I follow truth. Vex's face did not change, but his eyes showed a flicker of respect. Then come with us. Speak your truth. To his face, Zira looked at Ryan. Double quotes, go, he said. You don't need my permission, but you'll always have my support. She nodded. Then, without warning, she hugged him. Her people had no word for that gesture, but she didn't need one. She just held him, feeling safe. I will return, she whispered. Then she stepped into the shuttle as it rose into the sky. Ryan stood watching until it became a dot in the clouds. The royal ship was silent inside. The long silver halls reflected Gira's face back at her as she walked. She sat alone in the center chamber, surrounded by symbols of her family's history statues, banners, and glowing murals of past emperors. She felt like a stranger in her own world now. Commander Vec walked beside her but said nothing. He had always followed orders, but something in his eyes had changed. Maybe he had seen too much during their stay on the human colony. Maybe even he had started to wonder. After hours of quiet travel, they reached Zyreli Prime. The skies were deep purple, the palace built into the side of a glowing crystal mountain. Tall guards waited at the gates. Thousands of citizens gathered outside, watching the screens where Gira's return would be shown. Inside the throne chamber, Her father sat on the great silver chair. His robe shimmered like starlight, his expression cold and proud. The council sat around him, waiting. Zyhra walked in slowly. Her back was straight, her steps firm. Though her heart beat fast, she didn't look away. The emperor raised his hand. "Daughter, you have defied royal order. You spoke to the people without permission. And worse, you claim to feel love outside our sacred cycle. Explain yourself." Took a breath. "I did not defy truth. I discovered it." A wave of shocked murmurs passed through the council. "Humans," she continued, "live without cycles. They love without seasons. They form bonds through choice, not chemicals. And yet, those bonds are real, strong, deep." The emperor's voice grew louder. "Do you mean to compare our traditions to chaos?" "No," she said. "But I ask, what if feelings can come without warning? What if waiting for a signal is not the only way?" Elder Myril, sitting near the center, leaned forward. "And what did you feel?" Zira looked down for a moment, then met their eyes. "I felt afraid," she said, "because it wasn't planned. I felt warmth, joy, pain, care, all of it. Not because my body demanded it, but because my heart did." The emperor stood. "You claim to feel love." "I do," she said. "For a human. For Ryan?" His name echoed in the hall like thunder. "Then you will give up your title," the emperor declared. "You cannot be royal and live by human emotion." Zira didn't flinch. "Then I give it up." Gasps filled the room. She removed the silver crest from her robe and set it on the floor. "I would rather live with truth than rule with blind pride."
Oh.
The emperor stood in silence. Even he did not expect that. His hand trembled slightly before he closed it into a fist. Then someone clapped. It was Elder Myariel. Then another counselor joined, and another, until half the chamber was clapping, as quietly but with respect. Outside the palace, the crowd had seen everything. Screens replayed Gira's words. Some wept. Others stood in silence. Many whispered. She chose, not because of season, but because of feeling. Inside the throne room, the emperor sat down slowly. For the first time, his voice was soft. "And what will you do now?" Zira raised her chin. "I will return. To Ryan. To the place where I first felt real." He nodded once. "Then go." "But no, this you did what none dared. And for that, even a father must respect his daughter." Zira bowed, not as a royal, but as herself. Back on the human colony, Ryan stood near the garden. Every day since she left, he had returned there. He didn't expect anything, but something told him not to forget. A voice came from behind him. "You still drink that awful tea?" He froze, turned around, and saw her. Saras stood at the edge of the path, wearing simple clothes, no royal robe, no crest, just a travel bag and tired eyes. But her smile, that was real. "You came back," he said quietly. "You thought I wouldn't? I hoped." She walked closer. "I'm not a princess anymore. You never needed to be, Ryan." Replied, "You were always more than a title." She looked down. "I don't know what happens next. Not in your world, not even in mine. We figure it out together," Ryan said. "One step at a time." She looked up, and their eyes met. Slowly, gently, they reached for each other's hands. And this time, there were no cameras, no courts, no speeches, just two people standing under the stars, sharing something real, a bond not made by seasons, a love not built by rules, but chosen freely. And that choice changed everything.